They found it half buried beneath centuries of dust and detritus, a slab of basalt dark, cool to the touch, its surface covered in grooves and glyphs that seemed to pulse beneath the torchlight. No one spoke at first. The air felt charged, as if the stone itself held its breath, a chamber long forgotten, now awakened. The first glance revealed patterns, circles within circles, intersecting lines, a spiral that unwound like a serpent, and at its heart, a symbol that defied interpretation. They called in the scholars. They brought their tomes, leather-bound volumes filled with languages lost to time. They traced the glyphs with trembling fingers. They compared, they argued, they despaired. But none could name it. None could anchor its meaning to any known tongue, and yet it spoke. In the flicker of candlelight, the stone seemed to shift, a marking here, another there, moments of recognition, followed by deeper mystery. For every line explained, two more emerged. Whose hand had carved this? What mind had envisioned such geometry, such precision, such foreboding? They speculated. A temple of the ancients, a relic of a vanished sect, or perhaps a device, a mechanism of time. The scholars spoke in hushed tones of oracles, of sacerdotal rites, of calendars and prophecies, but their words felt inadequate, like trying to cage moonlight. Outside, the wind howled through ruined pillars, stirring fragments of pottery, carrying whispers of that long-gone world, echoes that found new shape in the shadows of this chamber. And in the center, the stone, silent, waiting. On its edge, a fracture thin, spider-like, as if some violence had cleaved it. Yet the glyphs around the break continued undisturbed, flowing into one another, unbroken by the wound. A scar, but not of destruction, rather of revelation, a reminder that even the hardest rock bends under time. Late into the night, they mapped every curve. They sketched, they cataloged, they drank bitter tea and puzzled over the spiral's terminus. At dawn, one scholar lingered. He placed his palm upon the cold stone and felt a pulse, not of blood nor of life, but of possibility, a rhythm like distant thunder, like the beat of ages. He spoke softly. "You do not mark days, you mark destinies." The chamber fell silent once more, and in that hush, truth settled like dust on leather scrolls. This was no mere calendar. This was an omen, a shadow cast across the face of time, a promise that beneath the orderly march of days lay hidden the fall of man. They traced the edges, fingers moving in curious tandem, mapping grooves that spiraled outward like ripples cast upon a still pond. Each glyph, a token of measurement, a mark of minutes, of moons, of seasons turning. But these were no simple tallies. They carried weight, portent, urgency. There were crescents angled just so like half-hidden moons in eclipse. There were lines that spoke of solstices, of equinoxes, but alongside them, symbols unknown, jagged sigils, angular and sharp, as if warning, as if tallying not days, but debts. The outer ring, 36 divisions. Scholars murmured of lunar mansions, but here, the divisions did not align. They staggered, they overlapped, suggesting a calendar that moved in secret patterns. At the 4 cardinal points, they found clusters of smaller circles, 5 in each quadrant. Perhaps, they thought, pentads of prophecy, 5 thresholds crossed, 5 tests endured, until something broke. And between these clusters, a row of tiny stars, 16 of them, 16 trials, 16 shadows, each etched with a flourish, a tale like a comet's tail, a testament to cycles unseen, yet felt deep in ancient marrow. They lit more candles. The flicker threw the glyphs into relief, and in that stark relief, they saw the omens. A star crossed by a slash, a crescent pierced by a dot, a spiral halted mid-curve. They counted. 1, 2, 3. 3 fractures, 3 warnings against the turning of the wheel. The calendar did not simply count forward, it pointed backward, marking events past and events yet to come, a ledger of disasters, of turning points, bound together in stone. They found the name carved thinly beside a glyph of broken stone. The word, translated loosely as fall, no language known today could claim it, and yet the shape of the glyph, its flourish, spoke louder than any phoneme. It hung there, a word that trembled on the lip of revelation, a prophecy waiting to be spoken aloud. They mapped the sequence: winter death, spring awakening, summer splendor, autumn decay. But between decay and death, between seasons familiar, lay a dark hiatus. A gap where nothing was marked, no cycle, no turning of days, just silence. They numbered the missing span: 40 days, 40 nights, 40 signs unreadable in their absence. 40, a number pregnant with myth. 40 trials, 40 years, 40 tears. They leaned closer, the crests of the curves, the hollows of the cuts. They felt as though they might bleed history, if only touched with reverence. Outside, the wind shifted. A chill rose in the chamber. The candles guttered, their light shrinking away. And in that flicker, they saw the spiral's terminus, a single glyph oval, seed-like encircled by thorns. The heart of the calendar, the core of the omen. It pulsed silently, reminding them that time is not kind, and that some marks were meant not to be read, but to be lived. They uncovered fragments of scrolls, tattered strips of parchment, ink faded to rust, yet the characters leapt from the surface as though alive. The scribes had written in a cipher, a language layered with meaning, each stroke a resonance, each mark a vibration of intent. By torchlight, the scholars pieced together syllables, murmuring incantations under their breath, sifting through half words and broken phrases, like oracles listening for the voice of the divine. In the margins, small sketches, a hand reaching skyward, a seed cracking open, a tower shattered into dust. Beneath these images, the text whispered warnings: that which measures must judge, that which counts must exact its price. One fragment spoke of a chronicle of ruin, of hours that bleed and days that fracture. Another hinted at a ritual to bind the turning of the wheel, to still the course of fate. They found a name long lost to memory carved into a corner: the hand of Thamiel. No record existed of such a figure, yet the glyph beside the name, the same seed, glyph encircled by thorns, linked it unmistakably to the heart of the calendar. They shuffled more fragments. A passage emerged. In the year when the twin comets crossed the zenith, when the circle divides into 10 and 2, the covenant unwinds, the scales collapse, and man's dominion falls. Twin comets, a zenith, numbers that did not belong to any known cycle. They felt a shiver, as though the parchment breathed cold air, and they realized this was not mere prophecy, but instruction, a guide to the moment when the calendar's warning became inevitable. Another line: "Let those who serve the timekeepers prepare the oblation, lest the gates open and the shadow consume the light." Oblation, sacrifice, gates, thresholds. Suddenly, the calendar was no longer passive. It demanded action, a ritual, an offering. They examined the script's finer points, each character carved with deliberate precision, some strokes almost invisible, as though meant only for eyes attuned to the sacred. And in the deepest margins, written in trembling hand, "Beware the silent spiral. It winds not outward, but inward, and those who trace its course may never return." A warning within a warning, a spiral that devours. The very shape they had tried to decode now turned against them. They sat in silence, hearts pounding. The flicker of candlelight revealed their own shadows, stretching long across the broken floor. In that hush, a distant echo, a whisper, as if the scribes themselves spoke from beyond the veil, reminding them that true knowledge comes at a cost. And in that chamber, amid broken pottery and rotting scrolls, the truth lay bare. To read the calendar was to enter its spell. To understand the omens was to invoke them. And the scribes, forgotten though they were, had left behind their voices, to giddier, to damn those who dared to listen. They aligned the grooves with the turning of dynasties, laid the stone beside the remnants of empires, their broken columns and sun-bleached statues, and watched as the calendar's spiral mirrored the rise and fall of men. First came the dawn of the river kingdoms, when waters swelled and silt-fed fertile plains. They matched the glyphs of flowing lines to the age of grain and city-states. When ziggurats pierced the sky and priests spoke of heaven as a realm within stones, the calendar marked their flourish and then their shattering as drought cracked the earth and the streams ran dry. They traced the next curve to the time of bronze and fire and sword, symbols of flame, of molten metal, and beneath them, the echoes of conquest, armies marching beneath standards striped with blood-red banners, cities stormed, citadels laid to waste. The calendar spoke of ambition, unbound, and of retribution, swift and absolute. A sharper turn revealed an age of iron, of forging and relentless toil, lines as straight and harsh as blades pointing across oceans where vessels braved storms and merchants bartered with distant kings. But wealth bred greed, and greed its own undoing. The calendar scratched a warning here, a cluster of tight rings like a noose constricting. They mapped the ink-black ring to a time of plague, when disease slithered through alleyways and over walls like a silent invader. Villages emptied, once lush fields lay fallow, and the marks of mortality appeared. Again in the glyphstony crosses, each one a life extinguished. Though the scribes had called them omens, the people lived through them. They counted their days, and their days were numbered. Another spiral turned, an age of ink and parchment. Scribes multiplied their secrets in monastic halls, a symbol of quill's feathers laid against circles, and beneath them, the slow uncoiling of knowledge. But knowledge, too, can blister the mind. The calendar noted the schisms brothers turned on brothers' lines, fracturing like lightning across a storm-dark sky. Then came the age of steel and steam of iron horses hissing along rails, a glyph of interlocking cogs turning ever faster, and the world reshaped by wheels and pistons. Cities rose like forests of chimneys, billowing smoke into the heavens. The calendar's rings grew compact too tight, as if the spiral itself felt the ache of acceleration, warning that beyond the speed of progress lies the abyss of entropy. They turned the stone to the present Curvian age of circuits and invisible currents, a web threads of light connecting distant minds, a pattern of nodes glowing softly in darkness. Here, the calendar hinted at a new threshold, where time collapses under the weight of instant thought, where seconds stretch and blur, and destiny is coded in lines of ones and zeros. Yet the deepest mark lay ahead beyond their sight, a region of jagged glyphs, half-formed and trembling at the stone's edge. They counted in 12, 14 strokes, symbols they could not name, a horizon of fate they were not meant to cross. And as they stepped back, the chamber seemed to pulse with the accumulated years, dust drifting like ghosts through shafts of morning light, ruins all around them silent witnesses to the calendar's gaze. They realized then, the stone does not judge the past. It does not mourn. It simply chronicles the turning wheel spinning ever onward, carrying mankind on its rim towards the next great fracture. The calendar had borne witness to every age, from the first glimmer of civilization to the noise of electric hum, yet its final spiral remained unread, a promise of time's complete unraveling and the fall of man, written in shadows yet to come. They carried the slab beneath a vault of midnight sky, where constellations danced in silent symphony and the chill air quivered with cosmic breath. A circle of stones rang with the hum of ritual, torches set in a wide ring, their flames bowing in the night wind, casting fickle light on the basalt surface. Above them, the stars wheeled through blackness, Orion's belt sharp as a blade, the Pleiades glimmering like distant embers, and at the zenith, a lone star that pulsed with uncanny brightness. They aligned the slab so its cardinal markers matched the points of the compass, north to Polaris, south to the dark void beneath the Milky Way's spill, east to the rising sun, west to its death in ocean's horizon. Then they watched, as the hours slipped past, a glyph edged closer to the edge of the circle, a comet-like tail pointing skyward, and beneath it, the spiral formed a perfect arc toward a star just cresting the horizon. They gasped, for the star, it was not one they knew. It burned with pale green light, dancing at the boundary of vision, like a spirit crossing between worlds. The scholars recorded each tremor of flame, each subtle shift in the glyph's shadow, moving in lockstep with the star's ascent. And as the star reached its zenith, the circle at the center of the calendar glowed, a soft phosphorescent bloom, as if the stone drank starlight and exhaled an echo. A voice broke the hush soft, awed. "It is the heart of Tamiel, returned to the sky." They traced the star's path back through the spiral, watching it carve through past ages, marking the comet crossing of empire and the eclipses of kings. This was no mere astronomical alignment. It was a resonance, a chord struck between stone and sky, between the world beneath and the realm above. The circle's glow deepened, and for a fleeting moment, the air thickened, as though the boundary between time and timelessness thinned. They felt it then, a pull, a sigh, a promise, and a threat entwined. In that moment, the calendar spoke without words. The alignment comes once in a cycle beyond count, when the twin comets dance beneath the watchful stars, and the spiral turns inward. A tremor rattled the torches, and the star's light flickered, as if acknowledging the summons. They recorded the moment, etched it into marginal notes, aware that no language could fully enclose its portent. For when stars aligned, they did more than illuminate. They wove threads of fate, tied destinies to celestial flame, and ushered the prophecy from page into flesh, into breath, into the beating heart of man. They gathered in sacred hush, faces rimmed in torchlight, eyes bright with dread and wonder. The chamber felt smaller, walls closing in. As the calendar's glow seeped into the air, a phosphorescent mist that tasted of brimstone and rain. One scholar stepped forward, paper lantern clutched to her chest. She opened a decaying tome, its spine creaking like a waking beast. Her voice cracked as she read the translation aloud. The seed of time breaks its shell, and from its womb the shadow emerges. Man shall know the weight of his days, when sky and earth conspire in ruin. A hush fell thicker than stone. They looked at the calendar's center, the thorn-encircled seed glyph, its glow now pulsing slow, deliberate, as if breathing. The words continued. Let the heedless hear the silent drum. Let the proud feel the spiral's pull. For in the hour when the circle divides, the covenant unravels, and the fall is writ in fire. They trace the words with trembling fingers. Fire, fall, covenant, each syllable a hammer blow in the chest. A cold wind slid beneath the doors, rattling the torches, and in that breath they heard it, a distant tolling, like a bell hung at the edge of the world. The prophecy was no longer distant. It filled the chamber, a pulse in their veins, a drumbeat in their skulls. They watched the outer ring, 12 divisions glowing one by one, until 2 remained dark, then 1, then none. The calendar went black, and in the void, rivers of luminescence bled along the fractured glyphs, revealing a hidden sequence. 5 marks, 4 marks, 3, 2, 1. The countdown beat in the silence, one last glow, then nothing. In that nothingness, they felt gravity shift, the stones beneath their feet humming, and the air crackling with unseen currents. A scholar whispered, voice trembling, "It begins." And the slate of time opened before them, an abyss hung with the promise of collapse. They lit black candles, their flames guttering like wounded hearts, and formed a circle around the calendar slab. They carried out the rites of old, each gesture precise, measured, sacred, hands lifted to the 4 winds, feet stepping the warding runes carved in dust. They chanted the invocation's words older than memory, tongues rolled around vowels like incantations, sealing the syllables with spit and reverence. They placed 5 obsidian shards at the cardinal points, each one inscribed with a petition: bind the spiral, halt the turning, shield the fall. In the center, a chalice of silver, filled with water drawn from the first well, watched by a high priest whose eyes gleamed like onyx. He spoke the final verse: "O time, who marches unbidden, turn back your course, hold fast your wheel, lest the world crack beneath your tread." The water trembled, ripples forming concentric waves, echoing the calendar's spirals, each ring a sigh of power. They anointed the calendar's glyphs, with oil mixed with crushed incense, lavender for peace, myrrh for purification, and the blood of a white goat offered for sacrifice and binding. The flame from the black candles leapt, as if drawn by invisible tinder, and the glyphs flared bright, a burst of light that seared retinas and hearts alike. The high priest let the chalice's water spill, a slow pour that shimmered in the torchlight, flowing into the fractures of the stone, filling the seams with liquid silver. A hush descended, broken only by the drip of residue, and then a sound like 1,000 clocks unwinding resonated beneath the floor. The shards of obsidian quivered beneath each cardinal point, raising thin cracks in the dust runes, as if striving to break free. They held their breath, waiting for collapse, for the ritual to fail, for the spiral's pull to snatch them away. But the shards held. The oil congealed into glassy filaments, sealing the cracks with a web of light. The chamber stilled, as though exhaling relief. The calendar's glow faded, returning to cold stone. They exulted, a cheer rising, trembling, but the high priest raised his hand. "Be wary," he warned, "for binding is not ending. The wheel is but paused, and the covenant waits." And they realized this ritual was not victory. It was a prayer, desperate and fugitive, a momentary hedge against the falling. They unfurled the scrolls, long sheets of vellum inked in black and crimson, laying them side by side on a great oak table. The pages bore the calendar's own reflections, a ledger of disasters, a catalogue of ruin. First entry, the first sundering, a razor-thin slash across kingdoms, when brother turned on brother, and the rivers ran with sorrow instead of water. Second, the black blossom, a plague that sprouted from marsh mists, wilting bodies in their beds, 1,000 tongues rattling their last wordless lament. Third, the shattered horizon, when storms unleashed their fury, coasts swallowed by the sea, and the world's edge became a tempest's maw. Each entry carried glyphs beside it, shattered pyramids, broken swords, eclipsed suns, and beside the glyphs, a date, not written in any known calendar but in the spiral cipher. They traced the dates, converting them against mortal reckonings. Matches emerged, the fall of ancient cities, the collapse of empires ruled by iron fist, the floods of valleys that vanished beneath water. But then, the entries dovetailed into horror's unnamed conflagrations that scorched skies into blood, winds that howled like the cries of the damned, and a final mark, the convergence. No explanation followed, just the glyph of the thorn-encircled seed next to a star split in two. They paged forward, the parchment ended dragged and torn, but beneath scribbled in hurried hand, "Beyond here lies the fall. No more words, only empty space, a silence more terrible than any line of text." They looked at one another eyes wide. The ledger spoke a truth they could scarcely bear. This calendar did not predict random calamities, it orchestrated them. Each event, a stroke in the writer's hand, binding the tapestry of fate with threads of pain and ash. And the final entry, the convergence, loomed like a door to oblivion, waiting for its hour. They stood atop steel and glass towers, gazing down at neon veins that pulsed through asphalt canyons, unaware that the ancient spiral threaded beneath their feet. The calendar's omens slept, hidden in data streams and satellite scans, whispering in algorithms and server farms, a code waiting for its day. They chased profit, pleasure, progress, spinning circuits faster, laying cables deeper, building ever higher. Yet the glyphs reappeared in graffiti on concrete walls, in the angles of sky bridges, in the fractal patterns of microchips. They called it coincidence, or art, or the architecture of chaos. But beneath the lines, the seed glyph pulsed, a shadow beneath the neon light. They tracked the signs, unseasonal storms, markets crashing in fractal spirals, eclipses that lasted hours, and the emergence of twin comets in distant skies. They laughed at superstition, at the idea of prophecy, yet unease lingered, a prickle at the base of the skull, a whisper in the midnight wind. Scientists detected anomalies, particles behaving against known laws, clocks losing seconds, gaining days, time itself hiccuping like a wounded thing. Engineers discovered microfractures in the foundations of skyscrapers, thin fissures that hummed with resonance as if echoing the calendar's own cracks. And dreamers, they dreamt of spirals, winding inward, their own reflections speaking back. We fall. Across continents, across cultures, the echoes spread, a synchronicity of fear and wonder. They could not see the stone, nor hear the script, but the calendar lived in their marrow, in the turn of each hour, in the beat of each second. And as the world edged closer to the convergence, they felt it, a tension in the air, a crack at the edge of reality. The spiral was unspooling, and the fall awaited. They built their towers, they coded their dreams, they reached for the heavens, unaware that the oldest prophecy still held them in its gaze.